Good morning and welcome to episode 9 of the Driver's Debrief. Welcome on in. I hope you're doing well. We've had quite an action-packed weekend when it comes to everything in the world of motorsports, and we got a lot to talk about. We do have a fairly controversial Mexican Grand Prix. Yet again, I don't know how we somehow had a more controversial race than Coda, but it's for, believe it or not, for the exact same reasons, unfortunately. So we're going to have to maneuver and meander through that drama. We have a lot of MotoGP news that's going to be very relevant to next weekend and more. So before I jump into it all, make sure to follow me on the Driver's Debrief on YouTube, X, and Rumble. We live stream every Monday, 8 a.m. Central Time, like you're seeing right now on X, and then we record these and upload them to YouTube and to Rumble afterwards. So regardless of the platform you prefer, feel free to check it out. And while you're there, make sure to follow, subscribe, and like the video. All right, well, let's look at what we're going to be talking about. We got MotoGP in Thailand, we have F1 in Mexico, and then we have NASCAR Homestead, Miami. Good sip of coffee. Gotta start the day with that. So we don't have any car news this week, none that really is worth sharing. So we're going to jump straight into the cooldown room. And even the cooldown room is a little abbreviated. Not intentionally, but we've just had kind of a light week when it comes to news. But starting off, Joe Gibbs Racing announces that William Solich in the number 18 will drive the number 18 car in Xfinity full time. Frankie Muniz or Muniz, however y'all pronounce it, that we're fans of him on some TV show. But he'll compete full time in NASCAR Truck Series next year with Ram Brothers Racing. AF Corse and Ferrari confirm their two-car 499p driver lineup will remain unchanged from 2024. And actually, that makes me remember the lineups for Penske Porsche have changed. So I'm gonna have to pull those up real quick. Let me go to their newsroom real quick. So the key changes are that they're going to have two regular drivers in the factory 963s in IMSA and WEC per car. Julian Andlauer has been upgraded. He's been promoted. He's going to be racing as the new factory driver in WEC. So it's going to be Julian Andlauer, Michael Christensen in one car, and then Kevin Estra and Lorenz Vantor in the other car in WEC. And then the IMSA lineup is going to be Mathieu Jaminet and Matt Campbell, with Felipe Nasr and Nick Tandy in the other car. Obviously, this is coming off the back of them winning the GTP championship in IMSA, but this is also with them on the cusp, just on the cusp of winning WEC as well. They could go on and win World Endurance Championship in the 963 as well as having won it in IMSA, which is super cool, and obviously I'm a fan, so I hope they do that. Okay, cool. That is it for the cooldown room, guys. Nice, easy, breezy, beautiful cover girl. It's that simple. Let's move into the first of the races. We're just going to start with the elephant in the room. We're going to start with Formula One. So before I jump in head first, let's get into the results. So obviously, F1 in Mexico is at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, just outside Mexico City. Let's go through the results. Yuki Tsunoda DNF, Alexander Albon DNF, and Fernando Alonso DNF. 17th was Sergio Perez, 16th was Liam Lawson, 15th Guan Yu Zhou, 14th Bottas, 13th Ocon, 12th Colapinto, not able to continue his points scoring streak. 11th was Lance Stroll, 10th was Pierre Gasly, 9th Nico Hulkenberg, 8th Oscar Piastri, 7th Kevin Magnussen, 6th Max Verstappen, 5th George Russell, 4th Lewis Hamilton, 3rd Charles Leclerc, 2nd Lando Norris, and smooth operator himself, Carlos Sainz, winning the Mexican Grand Prix, his first race of the season. But more importantly, in one of his last races as a Ferrari driver. So congratulations to Carlos for that. Okay, we got talking points. Oh boy, do we have talking points. So a little bit of I'll pull this up on my computer rather than on my phone. A little bit of context here as to why I'm interested. I'm eager, but also optimistic or hesitant as to why we're gonna jump into this. So I made some comments yesterday on X that didn't make some people very happy. Which apparently I have a habit of doing, it seems. So, Sergio Perez, Liam Lawson had some drama on track. And let's just say, we'll get into what the drama was, but Liam Lawson passes Sergio Perez down the front straight with DRS and flips him off. So, I tweeted, I am so sick of young drivers. The entitled academy drivers of the last 5 years frustrate me to no end. That was yesterday at 2:30, and now it has 170,000 views and nearly 2,000 likes. But I also have 41 comments. People upset using other academy drivers to defend. Somebody said, anyone but Perez. Don't know what that means. The favorite exchange was this guy replied with, quote, "This isn't a preppy dinner, it's racing, dumbass." I don't know how what I said, is referring to a preppy dinner. Whatever. I said, it's just not very classy. He goes, "It's racing, you don't have to be classy. OMG, you're so retarded." So, yeah, it was, somebody saying LGBT found. F1 fan discovers racing. That's a new one. I haven't seen that one. Yeah, I'm gonna have to reply to that one after the podcast. But that all being said, it was hotly contested on Twitter. Not a lot of people were agreeing with that. So let's go through this. You had Sergio Perez, who started in 18th, I think. He had a 5-second penalty, but he served it during a pit stop. He's working his way through the field. Presumably, people expected him to be able to get up into the top 10. He's done drives where he'll come from. It's never him starting in 10th and working his way to first. It's always he'll start 20th and work his way to 10th. He can make up 10 positions. It's just never with the top 10. And so I think a lot of people were expecting him to pretty precipitously make his way through the field. Granted, he has not performed well this year at all. Do I think he deserves a seat there? No. I think he should be replaced. I think Red Bull had a case to have replaced him already. But that being said, he's done it before. F1 TV, Sky Sports commentators were all saying ahead of time it was possible. It could be expected. So Perez is trying to make his way through the field. He gets up to the back of Lawson. And Liam Lawson drives Perez like he's Lando Norris fighting for a race win. I don't have a problem with him driving hard. I don't have a problem with door-to-door racing. I don't. If you listen to the podcast, go back and listen to any episode. My tour de force, my specialty is sports car racing. It's MotoGP, right? It's IndyCar. It's all forms of really hard, tight racing. But fast forward, when Liam Lawson ends up getting overtaken, he then, later in the race, is in a position where he's overtaking Perez, and he flips him off. So I don't have, again, it's not the flipping off, right? So for anybody that I was fighting with on Twitter that's watching this, or anybody that's about to go fight with me on Twitter, let's look at it this way. You're a young driver. You're trying to prove that you deserve a seat in the Red Bull factory team, right? Do you think fighting door to door with the Red Bull factory driver, when the Red Bull factory driver is trying to advance to the field to score points for a Constructors' Championship, do you think that's going to make the team that you are trying to impress more or less happy, right? You have factory drivers who have to put away their ego, put away their pace, and restrain themselves for the benefit of the team, right? So Charles Leclerc backs off of Carlos Sainz for the good of the team. Even though if he wanted to prove himself, if he wanted to reinstate how he's better than Carlos, if he wanted to whatever, he could have just gone on. That is to say, whatever motivation you have to say, or whatever reasoning Liam Lawson might have to fight hard against Perez, Charles Leclerc could also have. But Charles Leclerc took the high road and decided, you know what, for the benefit of the team, I'm not going to do this. For the benefit of Red Bull, if Liam Lawson's goal is to get in Red Bull, what would have helped, again, I'm not defending Perez, but what would have helped the team if Lawson really wanted it was to yield to Perez, and he didn't. Now, he fought hard. He was just as fast as Perez. Congratulations. Here's the other thing. If you wanted to make your case to Red Bull, you could always let Perez by. But then if you're hounding him, if you don't let Perez pull a gap on you, if your sector times and mini sector times are constantly faster on the same compound in a slower car, it's not like Horner and Marco aren't going to see that. It's not like, oh shit, I didn't see Liam Lawson overtake or fight Perez door to door. I don't know if he's good enough to be in the car. Really? That's what people would have to contend to say that Liam Lawson should. He had to. He's trying to prove. Really? The only way he's going to get a seat in Red Bull is by hampering the factory team's race and go door to door with Checo, who's miles off of Verstappen. Okay, it just seems like a strange. So anyway, my tweet is if you look at Lawson, if you look at Norris, if you look at let's see, who else am I thinking of? Young, maybe it's just them, honestly. But you have this attitude that because you came through the lower formulas, because you were a winner in F2, you deserve a seat in F1, which you don't. And Perez made a good point that Lawson, but I think he's speaking more broadly, needs to be more humble. The people that are in F1 have, whether you agree with it or not, in the eyes of the team owners, proven that they deserve the seat. And so if you come in and rattle everything, you have Lawson, who 2 weekends in a row has had two veteran drivers, whether you think they're good or like them or not, he has had two veteran drivers say, hey, the way you're going about this is not right. We don't appreciate it. Rein it in a little. Like, we know you're hot stuff. We know you're trying to prove yourself. Let's just rein it in a little bit, all right? And Lawson blows him off. The other thing is, I'm a Fernando fan, right? I'm exposing myself. All full disclosure, I'm biased, whatever, right? Liam Lawson, in his interview about Fernando for his 400 Grand Prix, was saying, well, you know, a lot of these guys used to be my heroes, but now they're my competitors. So, you know, while at one time they were my heroes, I don't see them as my heroes anymore. Now they're just competitors. Which is like, you know, this is just my reaction. Okay, all right. God forbid you say that you admire somebody that you're supposed to beat, right? I mean, Liam Lawson in his appearances last year, I really liked. Actually, I believe it or not, I was like, oh man, maybe when Fernando retires, Liam Lawson would be my new homie. But I don't know why, but his whole, it's like, I guess I'll just say this. You're fighting too hard for positions that don't matter in a car that is not competitive. But he's acting as if every race he's fighting for a race win. And that's, I think, the part that drives me up the wall the most, right? You'll have guys in the Haas's who, when a Mercedes or Red Bull come up on them, even though they're not obliged to give up the position in any way, decide, I'm gonna, you know, they're gonna have to earn it, but I'm not gonna fight them for it. It's not my race. But Tsunoda or Lawson's like, nah, screw that. I'm gonna fight you as hard as I can. I have an ego. I have to prove myself. And damn it, if I don't do it right now, when am I going to do it? I don't know. It just, grow up. There's several races left in the season. whether or not you fight Perez hard today is not going to determine whether or not you get the seat. Here's the other thing. Not just do you think it'd make Red Bull upset? It's your sister team. Like, it's as close as you can get to being your teammate without it being your teammate. And what are the rules? Don't take out your teammate. Don't race your teammate too hard. Don't, right? Anyway. Just saying. I think the young drivers have a sense of entitlement that they deserve to be there. And so when more senior, more veteran drivers say, hey, with all due respect, you're not. And none of the drivers have said, you raced me too hard. I don't like being raced. They're saying you are making moves that are desperate and dangerous potentially. And we don't appreciate that. So when you have those drivers, you should be open to the feedback. Like Perez said, you should remain humble and say, maybe, not that you're wrong, but maybe there's something I could do differently. And Lawson hasn't said that at all. In fact, he said the opposite. Now, I will say, what's funny is Horner has made Liam Lawson go apologize to Perez. Helmut Marko said he was racing Perez way too hard because they're team cars and they shouldn't have done that. And Perez came out and said Lawson needs to be humble. So the people that he's trying to replace, Perez, but the people he's trying to impress, the people who are trying to hire him, Marko and Horner, and I know it sounded like I said Horner, are upset at him. So was it worth it? Like, again, the comments were like, well, drivers get hot under their collar and they this and they that. And I know I've done races. I've been behind the visor. I understand. I understand what that's like. But on the flip side, having worked in motorsports on the team and sponsor side, that attitude is not something that is conducive in the long run, no matter how fast you are. It's a business. And when you're pissing people off and you're willing to potentially take out a sister team, it's not good for business. So anyway, we'll see where that goes. But speaking of desperate and dangerous, Max Verstappen. So I'm in a weird place when it comes to this Max Verstappen drama. And I feel like a white girl the way, and not in a demeaning way, but like the stereotype of coffee and, spilling the tea. But we have to talk about these things because it's the only thing anyone in the world of F1 is talking about. And so I think we're just gonna tackle these F1 topics, and then don't worry, we're gonna get to MotoGP, we're gonna get to NASCAR. For those of y'all who are interested in those topics, we'll get there, but just give me one sec. So Max Verstappen, let's say this. In 2021, I wanted Max Verstappen to win the championship. Not making a comment about the drama, about the whatever, right? That is too much time for this episode. But I wanted Max to win. 2022, we had for a minute there Ferrari versus Red Bull. That was cool. 2023, snooze fest. But I've never been I'm not a Max fan. I'm a Fernando fan. I just want a battle at the front of the field. I want a championship fight every season. That's all I want. Like 2022, I was cheering for Leclerc. 2023, it didn't matter. I mean, Fernando was getting podiums, so I was cheering for that. Potentially a race win for him. And this season, unfortunately, I really don't like Norris, but I'm happy that Red Bull's not dominating. I would love if Leclerc could sneak through and get a championship, okay? So, just full disclosure, I am not a Max Verstappen fan. But I'm also not a Lewis Hamilton stan or a Norris stan where every single thing that Max does is the Antichrist. So, with that said, I think Max's move at Coda, we can dive into it, but I talked about it at length in episode 8. So check out last weekend's episode 8. I went in depth about it. I think he should have gotten a penalty. Also, I think the regulations are the reason why this is happening. Fast forward to this weekend. Max Verstappen, instead of just yielding and understanding that Norris was faster and losing the 2 or 3 point differential in the championship, finished 6th. Losing, I think the think the delta was 11 points. I think Norris scored 19 and Max scored 10 or 11. Something like that. So we're looking at a 10 or 11 point differential. So, and this kind of goes back to our previous point about Lawson. Well, you get hot under the visor. You get, you don't know what it's like being under the helmet. First off, I do, but again, the point is the drivers who win championships when it looks impossible, and we're seeing this in MotoGP, are the ones that say, you know what, this battle is not worth fighting. I need to focus on scoring the maximum amount of points this race, because while I'm in the championship lead, Max also has to remember he can afford to give up some points to Norris, but if he does 10 points a race, he's going to lose the championship. If Norris outscores Max by 10 points or more, Norris will win the championship. And that's exactly what Max allowed to happen this race because he got hot under the collar. So, Max, in both cases, should have gotten a penalty. Honestly, for the second move, I think if anybody tries to defend the second move into, turn 8 or 9 or 10, you're blind. He clearly was pissed off that Norris got the better of him in 4 and decided, no, I'm not going to let you get away from me, and chucked it up the inside into whatever the corner was, 8, 9, or 10. And that move wasn't only he was never going to make it, that was just flat out dangerous. That was something that I'm not saying he should have been. I wouldn't have been surprised, and you would not find me arguing the point if he got DNF, if he got black flagged. Like, you were intentionally going to either take him out. I mean, again, if Lando didn't move, he would have taken him out. And go back to last week. For people that are going to try to say I'm not being consistent. My argument for the regulations last week was you can do anything you want on track as long as it's on track. As long as you leave room for another car. If Max threw it up the inside into that corner, stayed on track, and left a car's width for Norris on the outside, no harm, no foul. Same thing in 4. If Max chucked it up the inside but pulled left sharp enough that Norris could have still been on the right, no harm, no foul. But that's not what we're getting. And Max's ego is allowing him to make decisions that are not only costing him, they're costing the team, and they're costing his legacy. Here's why. On one side, you have people who are upset about 2021, upset about 2022, saying Max has always been the problem. See, this is exactly what we're saying. And I think that it's not necessarily fair to cast that back to 2021. I think you have to still look at those incidents one by one. Do I think Brazil was unfair? Sure. Do I think Monza was Max's fault? Not necessarily. We can get into that, right? There's plenty of room there to have those arguments, and they've been had for years. But this year, yeah, Ferrari deserves to win drivers and manufacturers, and I really hope they do. Because on one hand, I think Norris needs to be more forceful. Like, I'm not going to say he needs to take Max out, but I can't believe I'm going to do this. I'm going to give Lewis Hamilton credit. Lewis he knew he was justified enough in a lot of those moves where he was like, well, if we take each other out, we take each other out, but I don't need to yield. Meaning he, whether he had the right to the corner or not, he's like, I placed my car here. This is fair racing. This is close racing. If we get tangled up, we get tangled up. So it forced the conversations, and it forced both of them to DNF or for them to change their driving. Max hasn't quite gotten to that boundary with Lando yet, and Lando is not incorrectly. I think I'm not saying he should take him out. But Max as of now, maybe prior to Mexico, thinks he can get away with it. And now he can't, obviously, with the 2 10-second penalties. And you have people who are defending Max, who are on the Max Forever 33 Lion Roar Dutch national anthem fans that are saying, oh, this was a 5-second penalty for Norris at Coda. Now it's 10 seconds for Max. This is British bias. Guys, you're lucky Max hasn't gotten penalty points more than he already has. And if he's not careful, he could get them by the end of the season to where he misses a race. I don't know how many penalty points he has, but if he continues at this rate, 2 penalties a race, he could easily get there. Yeah, I listen, Max is at fault. If you have an issue with that, it's his ego, not mine, not Lando's, not the fans. It's Max. You there's nowhere else to look. And Max after the race is just kind of so what? Which I don't think is the right attitude at all. People look at Senna Prost and they think to themselves, well, Senna could take people out. And people view him as badass. And that's, I don't know. I feel like there's incidents in the past that people can use to justify racing that is not close, tight racing. Look at the Mercedes in Mexico. Going door to door, tight, leaving room for each other. That's just how it should be, period. Right? What's the difference? The only difference is that Lewis and George know that they can't take the other person out. Max doesn't know that. Lando doesn't know that. They think to themselves, what the hell? As long as I win, as long as I'm advancing my own interest, when in reality, it's not advancing the interests of the sport. And that's fundamentally, what provides these guys a career. So, not one of my better rants. That one was definitely more all over the place. But, what can you do? It's early. I'm tired. Okay. So, I think that is that's it for Red Bull. I'm done talking about Red Bull. Thank God. So Alonso had his 400th race start this weekend. He's breaking his own records every race now for the most experienced driver in Formula One, and very similar to his 300th race in Formula One, his car broke. So I get another Fernando Alonso DNF, having been a Fernando fan since 2004. It is not surprising. I lived through McLaren, Honda, Alpine, whatever. I can handle it. Just give me more DNFs. Haas, in their new partnership with Toyota, is just building rocket ships. I mean, Kevin Magnussen finishing 7th, I believe. It was 7th or 8th, scoring big points for Haas. They're in a really tight battle with Racing Bulls for the constructors, so good on Haas. And then apparently Leclerc said a naughty word after the race, and now they're deciding whether they're going to warn him or penalize him for saying the F word in a press conference after the race, which, again, people are mad at me on Twitter for saying, hey, it's not very classy when you're focused, when you need to be driving to flip people off, but then they won't say anything about Leclerc saying the F word and potentially getting penalized for it. They won't say, hey, why are you penalized? Whatever. All right, moving into MotoGP. MotoGP at the Chang International Circuit in Thailand. We have a lot of DNFs. Marco Bezzecchi, DNF. Raul Fernandez, DNF. Franco Morbidelli, DNF. Lorenzo Savadori, DNF. Alex Rins, DNF. And Augusto Fernandez, DNF. That leaves us with 16 riders who finished the race. In 16th was Quartararo, 15th Mir, 14th Bastianini, 13th Nakagami, 12th Luca Marini, 11th Marc Marquez, 10th Alex Marquez, 9th Espargaro, 8th Johan Zarco, 7th Vinales, 6th Binder, 5th Miller, 4th DG Antonio, 3rd Acosta, 2nd Martin, and in first place, Pecco Bagnaia, which is great for Pecco's championship fight. What's not so great is that Martin was second. And as you might remember from our previous episodes, Pecco could win every race, and if Martin finishes second in every race, Martin still wins the championship. So unfortunately, this is out of Pecco's hands. He did all he could. He has to hope that bad luck, mechanical, something happens to Jorge Martin to where he does not finish second in the rest of these races. And that's our first talking point, which is Pecco performed, but unfortunately, so did Jorge Martin. And that's, again, it's out of his hands, and it's completely Pecco's fault that is out of his hands. He allowed it to get out of his hands. But that's the case. So that all being said, we move into next race at Sepang with the Drivers' Championship still very much alive. Mixed conditions. It was a damp, wet race. Provided incredible racing, but Marc Marquez, after making an incredible, unlikely save in the first part of the corner, goes over the outside apex on a right-hander. Bike washes out, and he drops down. But he managed to finish, I think it was 10th. So Marc Marquez, though, was chasing down. He was fighting Pecco for the lead. Chat, we are cooked when Marc Marquez gets on the GP25 in 2025. He is going to pull the pants down of Pecco Bagnaia and expose him for what an amateur rider he is. Just saying. Bookmark this video. Come back next year and let me know. And then my favorite news I have heard in all of MotoGP for the last several years. The biggest news of this episode, Andrea Iannone is returning to MotoGP for the first time after his doping scandal a few years back. After riding in World Superbike, he is riding for VR46 Racing. The man that was supposed to be the heir to the Valentino Rossi Italian MotoGP throne, who had the skills to beat Dovizioso, but didn't have the opportunity due to the doping scandal. He is returning, and I could not be more psyched because after Rossi retired, Iannone was my favorite rider. Iannone was the rider that I wanted to go win world championships for Ducati. But he do the drugs. So, I didn't get that. But he's returning. He's going to race the VR46 at Malaysia, which I am so excited for. And I would love to have Iannone and Marquez battle for the win in Malaysia while Martin and Pecco are further down the field. I would kill for that. If Iannone makes a return to MotoGP full time, if that's on the cards, if that happens, I'm going to be wearing Iannone merchandise every single podcast. No questions asked. No questions asked. Don't ask any questions. It'll happen. So, super excited for that. MotoGP is getting spicy. MotoGP is getting fuego. It's getting caliente. All right, I'm going to get made fun of for that. All right, top 10 in NASCAR. Ryan Preece in 10th. Carson Hocevar in 9th. AJ Allmendinger with a good top 10 in 8th. Alex Bowman 7th. William Byron 6th. Chase Elliott 5th. Christopher Bell 4th. Denny Hamlin 3rd. Ryan Blaney 2nd. And Tyler Reddick with a last lap, last corner overtake on older tires for the win when he was in a must-win situation to make it to the Championship 4. So, Tyler, welcome to the Championship 4. Come on in, the water's fine. So, we got a lot of talking points. Is Homestead a better place to finish the season than Phoenix? That's been the conversation on X. Everybody says yes. Yes, it's a better place to finish than Phoenix. And having watched the March race at Phoenix, I can attest Homestead is better than Phoenix. All right, I already said that. Logano with another mediocre, you might even argue poor performance. Continues to prove why him being in the Championship 4 is absolutely ridiculous. So right now it's Reddick and Logano that have punched their way into the Championship 4. But again, if you look at all of Logano's stats this year, there's no reason. He's led like less than 5% of the laps on total over the course of the year. He was 15th in the regular season standings. Outside of his win in the playoffs, I don't think he's been in the top 10. So, just saying. So one of the things that people love about Homestead, and I think we get this at a lot of tracks, but the most common denominator as to whether or not you get this in a race is whether or not there's stage cautions. So this is me speculating, obviously, but there was multiple strategies, multiple different lines, low, high, middle, and everywhere fans were really happy. It provided great racing. Certain drivers like a different style of driving over another. Certain drivers like the drive faster with less tire conservation, but then you make more pit stops. Some drivers like double stinting, not really double stinting, but going longer on tires and fuel runs. And so Homestead provided for all that. But I think what is a bigger factor than what track they run at is the fact that there's stage breaks. So, for instance, if you ran Talladega with no stage breaks, you end up getting those different strategies. Cars that want to run longer, cars that want to run shorter. You have the effect of whether or not they want to run in the pack, or if there's a big pit stop group coming in that they're going to come in with. Working with the team or the manufacturer partners, and obviously other tracks as well. You could look at Bristol or Martinsville or whatever. I think you can get that racing without it being just Homestead. You can Atlanta, we had that racing, right? Kansas. If they got away with stage breaks, it allows for more stuff. So this is really, I guess, what I'm saying, which is if people like different strategies playing a part in the race, you have to get rid of the thing that neutralizes the strategies, which is the stage breaks. Already done a rant on that. We've only done 9 episodes, so you can go ahead and watch 1 through 9, and you'll hear plenty of rants about it. But yeah, I think NASCAR needs to get away from the stage breaks, let those strategies play a part, and that's also what we had in previous seasons of NASCAR before we got stage breaks. There were races where somebody might not be up at the front of the field for most of the race, but their strategy's working, they're putting in the work, they've done their number crunching, and all of a sudden at the end of the race, they're in a position to win. We don't get that because of stage breaks. And then the last talking point with NASCAR is, I don't know what it's going to take to make people happy with the Next Gen NASCAR Cup car, because everybody complains about it, but there is a growing contingent of people that are saying, hey, look at the races we've had this year. Look at the result, okay? Damaged vehicle policy, okay, that's harming the racing, but that's not a car-related issue. Okay, the cars aren't going as fast as they used to be. That's a car-related issue. Okay, you can't drive the car necessarily as hard by itself and make progress through the field. But then again, it doesn't matter the gen of car. If you pull out from the pack by yourself, it doesn't matter. The pack is always going to be faster. But there's certain things that people observe that they're blaming on the car. But you also have to look at what the car is producing in terms of racing. And you're getting, too long of a list to go through. Any road course is automatically better. All right, just saying that. You're getting international drivers who want to come race in NASCAR because of these cars, right? Kimi Räikkönen. Granted, Juan Pablo Montoya ran Cup Series, but I think his interest in coming back would have been less if it was the same car he already drove. So it was a new car. He got to come back and drive it and try something new, so that's cool. Jordan Taylor wouldn't have been in it as interested. Shane Van Gisbergen wouldn't have been as interested. So you have a lot of things. Shane Van Gisbergen has been one of the best things to happen to NASCAR because it's put NASCAR on a much larger audience that they weren't exposed to previously. And also, he's brought a lot of sponsorship in. He's brought certain teams to the front that needed successful results to get more sponsorship, right? So there's plenty of things that this next-gen car has enabled off the track as well and on the track. And obviously, if you go through and look at the classic finishes we've gotten already this season in the NASCAR Cup Series, I think it's hard to argue, let alone last season, it's hard to argue that the car hasn't produced incredible racing. And beyond that, let's remember, people get upset, oh, these cars flip too often, or they, whatever, in terms of damage and everything. I'd like to remind you that every single previous gen of NASCAR, if it got a dent or it got a fender punched in, didn't rebound like these cars do. You couldn't have the body kind of pop back into shape. You'd have to hammer it out. The body of previous gen cars, if it got bent at all, would always cut down tires. Always. When the bodywork got shredded to pieces, there was no way to really fix it, as opposed to this bodywork where it can get cracked and everything, but it retains its general shape. Like, it doesn't get bent and retain the bent form, like, because it's a mixture of carbon fiber and all this stuff, composite bodywork, as opposed to the sheet metal that's been hammered out. I think this car allows for our favorite drivers that would have been out of a lot of races, that would have been, returned to the garage sooner because the car had damage that they couldn't fix. I think this car doesn't get damaged as quickly, meaning that we have more of our favorite drivers racing for more of the races rather than being DNF'd due to some accidents or rubs on the wall and everything. I mean, if you're racing on the fence at Homestead and your right rear gets into the wall, that bodywork cuts down the rear tire every 10 out of 10 times. Does not every single time, as opposed to these cars where you can lean on the wall a little bit, you can rub the wall and it doesn't instantly bend the bodywork to then cut down tires. So I think that's a strength of this next gen car. We've had it now. This is the end of the third year. I don't think people that hate it are going to come around, but listen, let's enjoy it while we have it. Let's be optimistic fans that are grateful for the races that we're getting. The next gen car is not going to be around forever. It could be hybrid next. Let's just enjoy it. Let's ride this next gen car off into the sunset for however long we have it. Remember, car of tomorrow was hated, and if I look back now, the car of tomorrow was chef's kiss. The car of tomorrow was badass. I'm just gonna say that. Fight me. All right. So looking forward, we have next weekend the WEC finale in Bahrain. The 8 hours of Bahrain. Porsche looking to close out the Hypercar Championship. They've already won the GTE Championship. We have Formula One in Brazil at Sao Paulo, which created some exciting racing last year. Another track where Ferrari could win this race, McLaren could win this race, Red Bull could win this race, and Haas could get a top 5. Who knows, right? You have no idea when it comes to Bahrain or Sao Paulo. But, Mercedes as well. Mercedes could win that as well, as we saw in 2022. We have the Xfinity 500-mile race at Martinsville for NASCAR. This is the final race prior to the championship race in Phoenix. So that'll be an exciting race to watch, another short track. And then we have MotoGP in Malaysia. Andrea Iannone returning to MotoGP on a Ducati. I'll wear my Ducati team polo next episode to commemorate that. So that being said, guys, that's a little roadmap looking ahead into next week's episode. Every Monday, 8 a.m. Central Time, we get started, 9 a.m. Eastern. We do a live stream here on X, and then we upload to Rumble and YouTube. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider following here on X. We retweet a lot of the Conversation Corner stuff as it happens, so you don't miss out on any of the midweek news. But obviously, you can always watch the episode to catch up, find out more, and get some thoughts on the news from throughout the week. And then if you're watching this on playback, you're on YouTube or Rumble, or you're here on X, I guess, but you're on YouTube and Rumble more than likely. If you're watching this video, please just take a minute or two to follow, like the video, and comment on what you think about the drama we saw in the Mexican Grand Prix, how you think Andrea Iannone is going to do in Malaysia, and whether or not we should get rid of stage breaks in NASCAR across all courses. I really, really appreciate the few of y'all that came by on this live stream to come out and watch. Please do consider subscribing. This has been episode 9 of the Driver's Debrief. I'll see you next week.